We'll talk about climate change often in the future, but we are experiencing huge amounts of impacts at the moment.
The population is growing. One of the most problems, I would say, or issues with this century is climate change.
Over 200 million people in Africa that faced hunger in the past few years. What used to be the 1 in 50 years or 1 in 100 years kind of events, we're now experiencing every decade.
Hello and welcome to IITA TV Podcast Series. I am Tolokbe Olabode, and with me today is Folake. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, everyone. Good day, everyone. My name is Folake Odunton. Welcome to IITA TV Podcast Series.
This is a program where we discuss series of issues around agriculture, innovation, food safety, food production, anything you want to learn about, we'll discuss it. And today, which is the first episode ever, I'm excited. We'll be discussing the importance of innovation, especially when it comes to food security. So before we go into our discussion, and of course today we will be having two experts here with us. We have Dr. John Choptiani and Ms. Solara El-Sheikh. They would be giving their insight into these two concepts that we're going to be talking about today. So before we dive into the conversation proper, Folake, it is important to, set the stage around these two key issues, innovation and climate change. Climate issues, climate whatever you want to call it. So what's your take? Why innovation in agriculture?
All right, thank you, Tolu. Agriculture today is not just about producing food. It's gone beyond subsistence farming and small-scale food production. Agriculture today, looking at the rising population, threats in climate change, pests, diseases, soil degradation, it's important that we do more in terms of food production than actually producing the food. So we'll talk about food safety, we'll talk about sufficient food, its availability, nutritious food even, and then the fact that we need to produce at the quantity that meets current population. So we actually need innovation to meet the needs of food in today's economy of food production. And definitely we cannot rely on the previous means of food production as we did some 10, 20, 30 years back. We need to think about how to bundle up all of the food security challenges that we have and provide solutions that imminently meets the need of today's food challenge. And so I believe that the topic we have today to discuss and also giving it to our experts on the show is imperative for food production in terms of availability, sufficiency, nutritious foods, and even food safety. So it's expedient that we talk about this.
And we cannot overemphasize the impact of climate change on food production and safety. So these today are the issues we're going to be looking at. And I want to believe we're going to have an exciting and educative time.
I believe so too.
Today. All right. So we go directly into our questions. And of course, we have with us Dr. Choptiani and Ms. Solara. They will be giving us their own experiences and, insight into this discussion. Stay tuned and you will enjoy this. It's good to have you on board. And today we have with us Dr. John Choptiani. He's the climate adaptation expert here at IITA. We also have Ms. Solara El Sheikh, who is the Sudan Aflasif Project Management Specialist. She is also an expert in plant health management. They will be, adding flavor to our discussion today. You're welcome on board. And Folake, would you like to welcome them too?
Good morning, good afternoon. I don't know what time is it there, but my name is Folake Odunto, and it's a pleasure to have you join us on the show today, Dr. John and Ms. Solara. I hope I got that right. It's a pleasure to have you.
Okay, so today we're talking about innovation, as we have already established, and of course climate change, all to secure food security and availability. So we will be asking you some questions, and we would really like you to share your experience, your insights in all of this discussion today. So I'll ask Ms. Solara. We'll look at the importance of nutrition. We'll look at how it is essential for, human health, growth, and so many other things. So why is innovation in agriculture so critical today when, it comes to making sure we have enough safe food, and nutrition for growing population?
Thank you for that question. So, as you mentioned, the population is growing. One of the most problems, I would say, or issues with this century is climate change, growing a population, and also we have a lot of conflicts that are growing on the world. And it's very important that we manage to secure our foods. But not only that, we need to ensure that it's actually healthy and it's not doing any harm for us. So this is why innovation becomes extremely important in order to actually produce our food more efficiently, but also ensure that there is no byproduct or issues that cause problems in our diets. So just to give you some figures, for example, like the food production in general, agriculture is a major issue for climate change. So I think one of the numbers is 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions is coming from the agriculture sector. And unless we curb this, it will still be a major issue for our climate and for our world.
Thank you very much for that question. It is extremely important. So, Folake, I will hand over to you now.
All right, so over to you, Dr. John. I'd like to ask, how is climate change currently affecting food production systems? And what does this mean for food availability and access, especially in vulnerable regions?
Yeah, thank you. People talk about climate change often in the future, saying, the future climate change will be impacting this or that. And that's true in broad terms. But we are experiencing huge amounts of impacts at the moment. There's well over 200 million people in Africa that faced hunger in the past few years. We're experiencing shocks. And what used to be 1 in 50 years or 1 in 100 years kind of events, we're now experiencing every decade. And those are many things, but they're often happening all at once. So we get things like droughts followed immediately by flooding, and then pest infestations. So it's impacting people tremendously, and that washes out bridges and roads, makes it more dangerous. People are more vulnerable to health impacts such as diseases and such. So it's increasing things like aflatoxins and others. But really, I think CGIAR, IITA, and others have done tremendous work increasing yields, making our crops and our systems much more resilient to climate change. But the climate is changing, and we're now seeing all these multivariate impacts at the same time. So it's no longer, quote unquote, simply to increase yields or just improve one attribute on hardiness or early maturing. But our crops need to have resistance to multiple different pests and have more temperature and drought resistance all at the same time, which makes it much more complicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting you mentioned the different shocks. So my next question to Solara is going to be on the kind of climate-related shocks, such as drought, flood, and rising temperature, is like posing a great threat for food security and availability today.
Indeed, it is bringing on new challenges that were not there before. So one analogy I really like to give an example by is the coronavirus. And it does have the same impact in the sense that if we do have a food safety shock, which is now more coming because of the climate shocks and all of that, it would have a higher impact. Not like before. Before it would be contained and in certain areas, but now because of also the global food systems, now it's more globalized and we're eating the same food wherever we are. So the hazards that might come out of it is very persistent, and it might be at a very large scale. So using that same analogy, we need to really prevent problems coming from food safety and ensuring that our nutrition is really monitored and it's healthy, and we do a lot of testing, and a lot of technologies are used to ensure that there is preventative measures before a problem happens.
Thank you very much.
All right, Dr. John, and thank you, Mr. Lara. Dr. John, you mentioned that we would need a multi-pronged innovation package, so to speak, that would address multiple issues that we have facing agricultural productivity in recent times. Can you also share with us some examples of agricultural innovations that have significantly improved food safety or increased food availability in recent years, especially those developed by IITA or other city centers?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick a couple. What I wouldn't mind talking about is more of sort of a resilience approach. So what the literature is showing is it's not just a single intervention or a single variety. That's obviously essential. That's important. That's incredibly important work. But you need to have a set of activities or impact bundles where you're bundling things together that really address the limiting factors for smallholder communities. So if we look at things for the future, and if we say we want to achieve X, Y, Z outcome in whatever time frame, 5, 10, 20 years, we need to work backwards and look at what are the limiting factors. And some of those will be IITA innovations and activities and scaling programs. Some of those will be other partners that we work with, and some of that will be government, some of it will be private sector. But the point is, you can't just expect that to release an innovation and expect that will solve all the problems. It's a huge part of it. You can't have those bundles without the individual components, but you need to do it in collaboration to create synergies. And that's what's really important. And that's what a lot of our programming really focuses on, is assembling the right kind of teams. So Lara and I were just talking about a research project, and there's, I think, over a dozen partners in some of these grants that we're putting forward, recognizing that each partner has unique components. I mean, agriculture is huge, but if we don't look at infrastructure, health, land rights, etc., those aren't necessarily our primary focus, and probably shouldn't be. But we can focus on our part and collaborate with others to really make those impacts. So when we're doing things like a stepwise approach where it incorporates the different steps that you need to do to adopt climate smart or regenerative agriculture, it sort of walks the community or the farmer through how you adopt those practices. And then you can layer things on, like using AflaSafe to reduce the aflatoxins. You can use products like our Aquilimo app that gives recommendations on fertilizer use. You can add those things, and then you have all the background information behind the scenes that it's all, that it's really good quality, because we've done the mapping on the soil types and the soil health, and we really understand the context, and all our tremendous amounts of remote sensing and GIS data. We're really mapping, giving contextualized recommendations, because fundamentally farming is really, it's hyper local. One side of a river will be different than another. And that's where it'll depend. Our recommendations shouldn't be uniform. Depends on the individual and their capabilities as well. But all those parts, really contribute to making something that is resilient to shocks and stresses, so that we're not going back to a community in a few years and they've been, knocked back down by the shocks. We do mitigation work against climate change, but there's only so much we can do on mitigation. Those shocks will continue to happen and have always happened. They're happening more often now. But what we can do is help people be more resilient to those shocks and stresses in multivariate ways so that they can withstand future shocks while also increasing their agency, development, resilience, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. John. So this is going to be my last question for Ms. Solara. So I'm going to be asking you to, share what you think are those strategies or innovations that are, very critical for building climate-safe food system and then, safeguarding food production for us right now and then, of course, for the future.
Thank you for that. So I'll really build on what John has been mentioning. There really needs to be an integrated and interlinked approach. The research or even like the policymakers are now thinking about more of integrating all the food systems together. So instead of the traditional way of having a Ministry of Agriculture or a Ministry of Trade, there should be a way that they're all integrated in one system in order to achieve results. So that's really a very important link that needs to be done, I think, in the future. I also, maybe we overuse the word trade-off, but I think that's also a very important part, is that climate change has a negative impact, and I think people talk about that a lot, but it also has a positive impact. So for example, if you're speaking about aflatoxins, right now Africa has the highest burdens of issues coming from aflatoxins. But with climate change, this is moving up, so it's going to Europe. So it's actually, while it's negatively impacting another continent, it's positively impacting Africa. So I think there is some trade-offs and some challenges that we need to understand well to be able to take decisions that can help the next phase. Additionally, for food in general, it's very important that we take up innovations to be able to produce our food. And this is already ongoing. So there are many technologies that have been developed. So for example, we're talking about something called precision fermentation. And this is using the traditional fermentation method, but in order to produce precise foods. So the methods that are now, for example, producing like yogurt and all of that, we cannot control. But now the technology is going in an area that we can really control and actually produce precise food. We're also increasing consumption of insects in manufacturing. So with that comes also food safety challenges. We need to control those food safety challenges along the way and ensure that what we're trying to do to be more efficient and produce more food does not negatively impact the environment. And I think we can learn a lot from, I would say, the last century, or not the last century, but the last couple of hundred of years ago, because we were really focused on green, the green innovation and the green industrial area. And we were really focused on producing more food, but we did not look at the whole ecosystem. And that's why today we're suffering a lot in terms of climate change, in terms of lack of biodiversity. And I feel like this is something we need to consider and learn from what has happened before. At the moment is that with this, with the risk coming up from climate change, from a growing population that we need to feed very quickly, the challenges are still very strong, and we need to learn from previous mistakes that we have made in order to take the right decisions and ensure that we do not, I would say again, impact negatively the environment and what we're doing at the moment. So I believe that as researchers within IIT and other centers and other CGIAR centers, it's important that ecosystem is addressed during our research, and we look at the whole ecosystem at one time to assess the risks that we are going to bring in to the food systems that we're trying to help. So thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Solara. And back to Dr. John. You mentioned that we need to project to some 30 years 40 years ahead of now and then work backwards from forwards. Can you please give us, looking ahead, how do you see innovation shaping the future of agriculture in addressing challenges that we've mentioned, such as climate change, food loss, and access to safe food? Can you please give us your insight into how you see innovation shaping agriculture in future years?
Yeah, and I think that looking to the long term is important. When the vast majority of IITA's work starts at the breeding side, and that takes 5+ years, sometimes many more, to breed new varieties. So we have to be looking forward to the future to see what is the future going to look like. And we've started working on some of that. There's crop suitability mapping where we look at projections on temperature, CO2, et cetera. And there's a lot of work we're starting now on really focusing on nutrition. And recognizing IITA has two thrusts, two main pillars of the 2030 strategy, and that is focused on nutrition and climate change. Nutrition, recognizing that the fundamental purpose of food is nutrition. If you have empty calories, then it's not providing you with the nutritious components that you need to survive and thrive. And climate change is there because there are some positives, but it's predominantly negative. And we are eroding the benefits and the achievements over the past over 50 years. So we're looking at what are the implications on our biofortified crops, other mandate crops that we have, and looking at is the temperature increases as pests dynamics change with heat changes and CO2 changes, what will those look like? And it's this sort of quote unquote basic research that will help inform decisions in the breeding, in the biotech, in the seed systems, in the natural resource management, and on, the plant health, et cetera. That sort of research will help us vision what will look like in the future. There's no exact set date, but 10, 20, 30 years in the future. And then we'll get a picture of, well, this is what it'll happen with business as usual, if things don't change. And then we need to make sure we do our best to shore up and address those challenges. And that will be across our 13 science programs, obviously working with the other areas as well, like digital and M&E and others. But that will provide us not all of the information, but it'll provide us some of the information we need to make those decisions and for the research. Obviously, AI, digital side, that's a huge component. Working on digital twins, being able to model how our crops will react and respond to different shocks and stresses will be key. But then fundamentally, we work in agriculture. It's a human and environment situation. We want to be working more with the environment. And rather than trying to do it, and I'm not saying we've done this in the past, but others have, throw pesticides and fertilizers and expect results, trying to understand what's the optimal rates of these and how can we work more with nature rather than against it. Supporting smallholder farmers to do regenerative agriculture to reduce the harm, and rather than trying to get quick gains in short periods, look to the future, look to many years in the future and understand what are the implications if we have this activity, have this crop. Will it impact our water tables if too many people use it, if the population increases? Those are the kind of implications we need to be looking at. And with the climate side, with my program, we're trying to add that lens across our programming to help make sure that we're thinking about the unintended consequences. So the research will pop up all over the place. As climate is cross-cutting, there will be innovations we're looking at. We're trying to better understand the climate resilience of smallholders, but a lot of the innovations will be everywhere else across the board, and that will be integrated, and the climate will be part of that. But it'll be all across our work, which will be very exciting.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. John Choptiani. Thank you for having, honoring our invitation, and also Ms. Solara, thank you very much for being available for this first episode of IITA TV Podcast Series. It's very, very exciting that you've shared your insights with us today, and we hope when next we call upon you, will be available, to tell us more of your experiences. especially in ensuring food safety and availability. So until next episode of this podcast series, we wish you a very, very exciting time, and we say thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Happy to come back.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Cheers, bye-bye.